And getting the visa for Pakistan, how was that from Canada?
Okay, so it's an e-visa. So it's really easy now compared to before. You can apply online and you can get a multi-entry visa. But they did ask for a bank statement, a proof of employment, and a few other things, a sponsor in the country. So I had to contact a friend that I knew who lived in Pakistan, and he had to write a letter of invitation for me. So it was, even though it's an e-visa, it's still pretty difficult, especially if you're applying for a multi-entry visa. You'll need to have a sponsor in the country, bank statement, and things like that.
How many months do they give you?
They gave me 3 months, but the cool thing is you can extend it, and I managed to extend it twice. So that's very nice.
And how expensive was the extension?
The extension is cheap. It's $20 for three. Well, like mine was 3 months initially. So when you extend it, it's another $20, and then you get 3 months multi-entry. Yeah, if your initial visa is a single entry 1 month, then I'll extend that only 1 month. The initial one was $90 to get my 3 months visa, and then every further extension was $20.
I know there's some overlap between the cultures of Pakistan and Afghanistan. There's some, but obviously there's many different flavors within each country. What did you see as some of the key differences, like when you went from one to the other?
Well, definitely the one I would say is the westernization. Pakistan is much more westernized, especially in the cities. Like you'll see people wearing jeans, then they watch Netflix, and you could feel like you're in New York. Whereas in Afghanistan, especially outside Kabul, like you won't find McDonald's. It's very, very different. You don't feel like they've been Americanized or westernized as much as Pakistan. Whereas, you see plenty of KFCs in Pakistan, for instance, and you don't see that in Afghanistan. So in a way, Afghanistan felt more genuine. It felt like its culture had been preserved better. Whereas I feel like Pakistan is westernizing very quickly. People know more about Western shows than me here. Like when you talk to people, they're more up to date with the new Netflix series than I am as a Westerner. It's very interesting.
Do you know how people decide to get married to each other? Is it arranged marriages, or because when it's such a segregated society, I always find that fascinating. Like, how do women and men actually decide to?
Yeah, it's still arranged marriages on both sides. Their parents choose their spouses. So sometimes in Pakistan, I met a few people who had love marriages, but they're the minority. Most of them.
And do you know
Arranged
what
marriages.
is the metric that they use to try to find the ideal spouse? I imagine for men, the people are looking for rich men and wealthy men, I imagine. And for women, what is the criteria? What are they looking for?
So basically, I've got a friend here who recently got married, so I can tell you it's quite interesting. Like you said, for the men, it's job prospect, income prospect, his financial situation. Is he somebody that's responsible and will have a stable life? And then for women, usually guys will ask their mom, pick a girl. So the mom chooses for them, which is very interesting because it's segregated on a gender basis. Guys can't really go out and meet women. So their mom is going to go and find a girl for them. And they might be lucky. Sometimes the mom will show them a picture of the girl on their phone, and the guy can see what she looks like. But it's usually based on beauty. That's what they've told me. So the guy will say, "I like a girl that looks like this and that,"
Really?
and then the mother will go and try to literally shop for a wife, and then after that, the marriage will take place.
That's fascinating because that's different than other Muslim countries I've been in Africa where beauty is not necessarily the overriding concern. For example, if the parents had invested a lot of money into a woman's education, then the bride price, I assume there's a bride price going on there in Afghanistan and Pakistan, but is that right?
I don't think there's a bride price in Pakistan. There might be, but I'm not exactly sure. I know the guy is supposed to obviously pay for the wedding and everything, but I don't think they pay. See, it's confusing because here it's a mix of Islamic culture and subcontinent culture. So sometimes they have traditions that are purely based on Islam, and others that overlap from their cultural context with India. But I don't know if they pay a bride price. Do they do that in every African country you've been to?
Yeah, it's pretty much universal. No matter whether they're Muslim or not, or Christian or whatever the hell they want to be, they're almost all bride price. There's a little bit less so maybe in North Africa, slightly, but in the Sub-Sahara, it's pretty universal.
And it's always from the man to the bride's family.
Correct. Yeah, that's who gets to keep the money and whatever gifts. And there's also expectation that you're supposed to give une valise, a suitcase full of gifts, clothing to your bride. It's in addition, and all this is determined generally by your ability to pay. So if you're a very impoverished person, obviously you're not going to give that much. But if you're super wealthy, you're expected to give a lot more. A lot of people will make a big deal saying, "Oh, it's whatever you want to give." It's what I said. Really? So if I can give $5, I'm like, no, you can't get that. Okay, so then tell me what the real price is. Oh, it's whatever you can afford. Well, I don't know. It's so vague. It's frustrating that.
It's funny you say that about the vagueness that irritates you, because that's something I've learned to appreciate about our Western culture. Because you say, like, you ask them, "Can you give $5?" and then obviously they say no. Even here, when you ask people about prices, I mean, in that you're talking about bride prices, but any price here, like if somebody does a service for you, they'll always say, "Oh yeah, give whatever you want." But they have an idea. They know what price they want to get from you. But there's not that, Westerners were straightforward, we're direct. We're able to just say, "Hey, this is worth $100, pay me $100. But here they have that culture where they don't want to offend you, and everything is subtle and implied, and you're supposed to sort of guess what you should give, but they don't want to tell you straight up, and it's very interesting.
Right, and also they have an advantage that since you don't know the price, you might actually accidentally offer 10 times the actual going rate, for example. That's another benefit.
Yeah. Or like you might have seen that as well in Africa, but here sometimes taxi drivers will tell you, like, "Oh, no, don't pay for the ride, you're a guest, and I'm happy to, it's my pleasure to give you a ride. Don't pay for it." But deep down, he wants you to pay, and you have to know that, and you have to insist. And then the game is that you insist. He pretends he's not interested a few times until the point where you just force it onto him and give him the money and then go away.
That definitely will never, ever fucking happen in Africa.
Really?
No,
okay, that's interesting.
No way in hell.
Maybe in Sudan. Did it never
yes,
happen to you in
Sudan. Sudan is the only exception. You're right. And maybe, yeah, exactly. So,
well, in Sudan, usually they mean it, to be fair. Usually they do mean it.
Give you an example. Africa, sub-Saharans, they will never, ever, ever turn you down for money, practically. I mean, I'm exaggerating because whenever you say never, there's always exceptions. But give you an example. I stayed at many Africans' homes because I picked up 3,000 hitchhikers, so they would invite me to their house, and I would stay there. And at the end of the stay, I would offer them money. Almost always they took the money. Almost always. Now, that would be unthinkable, I imagine, in Afghanistan. If I offer, it would be insulting to give them money. But in Sub-Sahara...
Yeah, I've tried that a few times. If you offer, sometimes they are genuinely insulted. They won't... because they feel like you're offending their sense of hospitality.
Absolutely, right. But in the Sub-Sahara, they will never, ever, ever turn down money. I'm giving an absolute statement, which of course everybody will refute. But in general, it's 99% of the time, Africans will accept whatever money you offer them gladly, happily, for whatever reason. They perform. They go do a service for you. You ask them for a bottle of water, they'll go. If you give them a tip for the bottle of water, yeah, sure, they'll take that too. If they offer you a meal, and if you say thank you so much for the meal, here's some money, oftentimes. Now, if it's a very wealthy family in Africa, okay, that's true. That's probably where they will not accept the money. But if it's somebody who's just middle of the road or poor, they'll take whatever money you offer anyway. So, all right. So let's wrap things up and tease people for the future episodes. What are your plans coming up?
So I'm waiting for my Indian visa here in Islamabad, and it's taking forever. I don't know if I'll be able to get it because of the political situation between the two countries. They make it hard for people to get an Indian visa here in Pakistan. So if I do get the visa, then I'll go to India and explore the country, and it'll be interesting for me to see the differences between India and Pakistan. And if they don't give it to me, then I'm thinking of going to Southern Africa for the African winter, maybe a place like Angola or Zambia. I think Angola now has an e-visa, so I might go and see it, because it was hard in the past to see Angola. I don't know how it was when you went there, but it used to be difficult to get the visa, I think.
Yes, it was very hard, and I was fortunate to finally go to a town near the DRC border, and with Angola, and there you could get a 5-day transit visa. That was the only way I could pull it off.
Wait, so you only got 5 days to see the country?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
They would not give me a visa for any other thing. I tried for 2 weeks in Kinshasa, in the capital of DRC, and they would not do it. They told me to go get it from my home embassy to give me a real visa. But all this has changed, as you kind of alluded to. Nowadays, apparently, you can get, I think, an e-visa. Certainly, you can get a 30-day visa in Angola relatively easy. But I could not at the time that I went. It was just 5-day transit, which was a pain in the ass because I had to climb the tallest mountain of Angola and traverse the entire country, which is a very big country.
That's crazy. One thing I will say, too, since we're wrapping up, to bring it back to what we said earlier about Afghanistan, if your listeners are listening and they're wondering, oh, isn't it dangerous now to go to Afghanistan? The thing is, people were going before when there was a bloody war happening and people were being shot at and it was literally a war zone. And yet people think it's more dangerous to go now, which I find very weird from a logical standpoint, because regardless of what people think of who's running the country, governments and things like that, everybody could agree that a country is safer when there's no war in the country, but it's just strange. Like, people think it's more dangerous to go now than before. And I don't understand where that belief comes.
Let me explain what I think most people are thinking when they hear that. The reason that they think is more dangerous now is that they think that the current regime, the Taliban, are unfriendly to Westerners, NATO-friendly countries, that kind of stuff. That's where that's coming from. So yes, there's no war going on, but there's an unfriendly regime there, and so they just think that if they don't get killed or kidnapped, and let's say they get kidnapped, and then they think, okay, well, the Taliban's not going to fight to save my ass, and there's no embassy there, so how the hell am I going to get out of that situation? So that's what they're, I think, thinking. And obviously you proved them wrong.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a great point. And I think, Francis, that's what I was also worried about before going. And it was a big decision. I thought, should I go or not? And then I thought, well, it'll either be my last trip or my best trip. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be the best one. It was really, really interesting. I don't know how illegal if we're allowed to say illegal things on the podcast, but they have a lot of drug factories in Afghanistan, especially in the Helmand province. And it's crazy. You can see the opium being processed and turned into heroin, and that's something you'll only see in Afghanistan unless you have contacts in the West who can show you their drug factories. But in Afghanistan, it's a cultural thing, and people will gladly show you how the opium is being processed, and they're doing all kinds of drugs, and you can sort of see it and take pictures, and it's fascinating. It's really a unique country.
That sounds great. We're going to sign up for the drug, heroin, opium tours out of Afghanistan. But I think it's better to go for the suicide bomber tour, but that's on me. Okay, thanks. And last thing, if you like anybody to follow you or connect with you on social media, do you have any things where you would send people?
Yeah, at the moment, the best way to get in touch is on Facebook. So my name is Xavier PG, Xavier space PG.
Okay, and I'll put a link right in the show notes. Thank you again, and we will definitely 100% talk again because I think it's fascinating. And also, you talked about bombarding me with a few questions, so we might have a special podcast about that. Thank you again, Xavier. And that ends this episode of the WanderLearn podcast, where we explore travel, technology, and transformation. If you'd like to see the show notes with links to what we've talked about, go to wanderlearn.com and click on this episode. If you'd like to connect with me, just remember Tapon. That's my first initial and my last name. Tapon is always my social media username. My website is ftapon.com. Do you want to leave me an anonymous voicemail where you can make a comment or ask a question? Then go to speakpipe.com/ftapon. Furthermore, if you'd like to get rewarded for supporting my projects, then go to patreon.com/ftapon. That's where you can pick up some remarkable rewards for as little as $2 a month. Now, 5 quick favors. Number 1, subscribe to the WanderLearn podcast. 2, download it. 3, share it. 4, review it. And 5, sign up for my newsletter at wanderlearn.com. Our theme music was composed by Eric Stratman. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.